The raw material of qualitative research is chaotic. You sit down with hours of recorded human experience, rambling thoughts, contradictions, and emotional pauses, and you are tasked with bringing order to it. You have to translate that tangled web of personal history into structured academic insight. To understand how researchers accomplish this, we can look at a specific study, analyzing 5 semi-structured interview transcripts. The subjects are primary healthcare physicians, and the phenomenon being studied is professional burnout. These 5 participants offer a diverse data set. They range in age from 33 to 70. They span multiple genders, ethnicities, and career stages, from a doctor with 2 years of experience to one with 35. To process this data, the researcher uses Interpretive Phenomenological Analysis, or IPA. This methodology is specifically designed to examine how people make sense of their major life experiences. The core engine driving this methodology is the double hermeneutic, a 2-stage interpretation process. The participant tries making sense of their world, while the researcher makes sense of the participant making sense of their world. This concept demands a specific posture from the analyst. Interpretation moves beyond summarizing the words on the page to examine the psychological framework the participant uses to construct their reality. In IPA, the researcher's mandate is second-order interpretation. You take the literal transcription and elevate it into deep psychological understanding. Before reading a single line of data, the IPA researcher must perform a step called bracketing. You have to catalog your existing assumptions about the topic. In this study, the researcher entered the process expecting workload and administrative burdens to dominate the narrative. That is the standard conclusion in existing burnout literature. Explicitly naming these biases keeps them visible, acknowledging that erasing preconceptions entirely is impossible. This visibility protects the researcher from accidentally steering the analysis to confirm what they already expect to find. With biases bracketed, the researcher implements the individualized strategy. This is the structural rule governing the initial phase of the study. Under this strategy, the researcher must complete a full analytical cycle on a single transcript, completely independent of the others. You start with participant 1, code the data, and extract the themes, without looking at participant 2. You prevent premature pattern matching. Isolating the cases is the only way to protect the highly specific, divergent data points from being erased by the average. The isolation begins with participant 1, or P1. She is a 37-year-old female physician and a working parent. Reading through her transcript, a structural tension emerges in her syntax. When asked about the causes of burnout, she provides dense, lengthy paragraphs. When asked how she actually experiences the burnout, her answers become terse. The analyst has to interrogate this brevity. Is she keeping her answers short because the symptoms of exhaustion feel obvious to her? Or is this brevity a protective mechanism, a way to keep the painful realities of her daily life at a safe distance? The answer reveals itself in her coping mechanisms. Notice her exact phrasing when describing stress. She hopes routines will help me feel at peace again. IPA requires slowing down to analyze language. Look at the word again. That single modifier implies a prior state of peace that was disrupted, changing the direction of the analysis. The word again reframes recovery as the restoration of a lost state of being, rather than the acquisition of a new skill. The analysis moves down the line to participant 3. P3 is a 70-year-old male physician with 35 years in practice. His transcript presents an immediate analytical hurdle. P3 does not experience burnout. Curious tone. How does a researcher analyze a transcript where the phenomenon of interest is largely absent? You look at the distancing language. P3 consistently frames burnout as an issue belonging to younger doctors. He empathizes with them, but the phrasing creates a firm boundary, othering the problem away from his own practice. But his choice of verbs reveals his true perspective. He states that younger doctors with the wrong mindset can easily fall. To fall implies a total collapse, a sudden loss of professional footing. P3's transcript proves that even the absence of a direct experience yields critical phenomenological data. Then we reach participant 4. She is the youngest doctor in the study, with only 2 years of experience, and she is the only physician reporting acute daily burnout. Her exhaustion stems from the daily labor of overcoming patient skepticism rooted in her physical appearance, a pressure distinct from standard administrative workload. She describes walking into examination rooms and realizing the parents simply do not believe she is the physician qualified to treat their child. This creates intense analytical friction. P4's reality is embodied. The challenge is written on her person before she even speaks. This resists the framework of administrative fatigue established by the other transcripts. It would be easier to categorize her stress under a broad label like early career friction to make the final data look cohesive. But you must preserve the outlier. Maintaining the distinct dimension of her account is an ethical necessity in qualitative research. When a participant's reality resists your emerging framework, the analysis deepens. With the idiographic work complete, every case analyzed entirely on its own, the researcher finally pulls back to look at all 5 transcripts simultaneously. The cross-case comparison begins. Universal convergences immediately emerge. Despite their demographic differences, all 5 physicians rely on relational or spiritual coping strategies to survive their work. This chart plots findings across 3 participants. At the 2-year mark, P4 reflects acute daily vulnerability. At 30 years, P5 narrates burnout as a past feature. At 35 years, P3 resolved it through structural autonomy. Connecting them reveals a career stage arc. This maps a trajectory from vulnerability to hard-won resilience. If the transcripts were immediately grouped by shared keywords, this temporal story would have remained invisible. The rigorous sequential nature of the methodology exposed the insight. The analytical process hinges on the definitive line between finding a pattern and making meaning. The observation that all 5 physicians attributed their burnout to external forces, hospital administration, patient demands, and systemic failures, serves as the initial pattern. Making meaning requires interrogating the psychological utility of that frame, identifying it as a shield for professional self-protection. While a novice researcher might stop at identifying the pattern, rigorous IPA requires this move into psychological function. The methodology structurally moves the researcher from simple observation to an understanding of interpretive purpose. Ultimately, you have to remember the reality behind the data. These transcripts are not abstract puzzles to be mined for clever podes. They are records of people. They document physical exhaustion, the requirement to prove competence before practicing, and the search for peace through prayer and community. There is a misconception that empathy for subjects compromises scientific objectivity. In qualitative research, holding on to the human reality of the subject alongside the analytical framework is a requirement for validity. IPA delivers an account that honors the complex, particular humanity of a lived experience.